Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Happy 5th of July. We're so happy to have you here for our celebration. For those of you who are not familiar with why this day is so special, you have me to give you a little history lesson before we get into our screening of Sonic Escape Routes. So I am going to read to you, darling. In 1827, I think, I'll back up. So yesterday was the 4th, and a couple weeks ago, it was Juneteenth. And I really love when our young sis, who will be moderating today's conversation after the screening, asks me, what is the difference between Juneteenth and the 5th of July? And I said, the answer and the key is in the dates. Haven't turned. Okay. So I said the key and the answer to that is in the dates. The dates will tell you everything. Unfortunately, emancipation in this country was uneven and gradual. And so some of the northern states, some of the Black folk there were celebrating emancipation before our folk in Texas and around the nation were able to do so for Juneteenth later in the 60s of the 19th century. So now I read. In 1827, Black New Yorkers began to observe the 5th of July as a way to safely celebrate their recent emancipation while quietly critiquing America's Independence Day. This celebration is annually acknowledged at Weeksville. It became the namesake of Weeksville's 5th of July Resource Center for Self-Determination and Freedom. It is reclaimed through Weeksville. It is celebrated here. I am Joyce Leanne, and I'm the program curator, but I have had a long legacy with Weeksville all the way back to my days in library school. And I remember celebrating the 5th of July then with the water toast, and years have gone by, and I've been able to bring dynamic programming here to honor this day. I'm really excited to have this year, we're presenting Grasping Things at the Root, our route. Brings together back. Well, last year we had a brilliant program called Sensing History, where all of our artists and our young moderator were all participants of that program. I will drop a link in the chat so you could go and just check out what the program entailed. And we did so many amazing things that we really wanted to celebrate and uplift all that was done last year. And so in order to help celebrate July 5th, we are bringing back artists Akima Zane and Rena Anaku, excuse me, sis, if I mispronounce your name, back to Weeksville to honor this history. This screening of Sonic Escape Routes was created during the Legacies Project Sensing History program, and it is a sound performance that explores the following. What is the spiritual core, and where is the liminal space for a people whose freedom to thrive remains in question? And what are the varying routes that anchor us towards flight or resistance? Through this collaborative installation, the artists aim to assert and embed their own personal narratives and histories to traverse the archives of Weeksville in order to answer these fundamental questions. The screening will be followed by an intergenerational conversation moderated by one of our Building on a Legacy alumni, Kalia Bain. And with further ado, let's get into the screening.
We acknowledge and give thanks to gathering here on the indigenous lands of the Munsee, Lenape, and Canarsie, which we know as Weeksville, and give thanks to the Native and Black stewards of this land and the abundance of nature that continues to give and coexist with us.
'Twas mercy brought me back from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God, that there's a Savior too. Once I redemption neither sought nor knew. Some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolic dye.
Come, come, come to a land of liberty and freedom, where the colored man is not despised nor a deaf ear turned to them. This is the place to live in peace and to enjoy the comforts of life. It must be speedily cured. If need be, burned out with caustic, ere it spread and drink out the very lifeblood of the people. I allude to what is commonly called African colonization or Negro colonization. I always thought up to this time that what we most wanted and continually sought after was full admission into and not secession from these institutions of our country. That even that meeting was to express our determination to stay here and be fully incorporated into all the institutions of the country and to let go no hold already gained, either in church, school, or state. Was I mistaken? America is my home, my country, and I have no other. I love whatever of good there may be in her institutions. I hate her sins. I loathe her slavery. And I pray heaven that ere long she may wash away her guilt in tears of repentance. Why should we wait 3 centuries for the deep-seated prejudice in this country to subside? Slaves in the midst of freedom? What can we do? What shall we do? Shall we fly? Or shall we resist?
Give me them. Freedom blues. Give me them. Give me them. Freedom blues. Give me them. Freedom. Give me them. Freedom blues. I wanna fly away. Give me them. Inspire ye sacred, your ventress Afrique in her great design. Immortal power, I trace thy spring, assist my strains while I thy glories sing. The acts of long departed years by thee, recovered in due order ranged, we see. Thy power, the long forgotten calls from night, that sweetly plays before the fancy sight. And our nocturnal vision pours. The couple treasure of her secret stores. Swift from above she wings her silent flight. Through realms, fair regent of the night. And in her pomp of images displayed, to the high raptured poet, gives her aid. Through the unbounded regions of the mind, diffusing light, celestial and refined. The heavenly phantom paints the actions done by every tribe beneath the rolling sun.
Peace, family. I hope everyone enjoyed that. My name is Kalia. I am a singer, songwriter, poet, and youth organizer. I am a 10th grader at Ember Charter School. And I had the pleasure of being a participant in the 2020 Building on a Legacy Youth Program at Weeksville's Heritage Center's The Legacy Project. Today, I will be moderating an intergenerational conversation between the geniuses behind the Sonic Escape routes, as you just saw. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce the artists Akima Zane and Rina Anakwe. Hi guys. So today I'm just going to be asking some questions and letting the artists explore different ideas and topics. The first question that I have is, what is, in your own words, in your own definition, Sonic Escape routes?
I guess I'll start. I think it's an exploration of a history, a time, and a continuum of the struggle to deal in what it means to, I think there was a quote from what Rina read, despise or a deaf ear turn to them, like negotiating that plight and its extensiveness into the current context that we endure and are enduring through sound. What does that sound like? What does that feel like? Yeah.
I would add to what Akima said that I guess depending on which region that you come from, specifically to the word root or route, it is a double entendre, right? So the things that root us, ROOT, but then also these roots, these actual like journeys, these paths, these mappings of sonically, you know, our struggles and our perseverance is really what I think is something that resonates with me through how we develop the piece, through the research, through the people that all of this work has come from. You know, it's the thing that I really loved about the archive is that there is so much language, right? Because many times there's an absence of that, of documentation of our people, I would say, through history, because, you know, depending on who's controlling things, those are the people that write the history books. But here we have a lot of documentation from the people that actually were living through this, were living at the time. And then for us too, this is our way of sonically documenting our kind of the parallels that we were feeling with also reading about people that also are questioning, should we stay here or should we leave, you know? So I think that's really it, is like connecting that sonic material, I keep using the word, but yeah, that sound material from back then to also now, and bridging those two together and realizing how many similarities that we still have despite all the years that have passed.
Right. So that segues us right into the next question, which talks about, I know the video described a conversation, kind of a debate between the idea of flight and resistance. So in your opinion, based on the research that you have done, what is the difference between flight and resistance? And then how does it apply to like freedom mentally and physically in Black and Brown communities?
That's a great question. You know, the thing that I would note that we really found while reading through a lot of the material was that
the conflict, between, like you're saying, flight and resistance. It was the choice to either leave and to restart somewhere else, as Martin Delaney, which was one of the authors of one of the quotes that I read, he called it. He said, we need to go back and we need to cultivate Africa for Africans, because at that time, people were still African in that way, but then there are other people who are also claiming and really claiming the fact that they were African American. So this is actually like a turning point where people were saying, I've been away from home for so long. Now this is my home. America is my home, which is one of the things that I said, this is where I live. This is where I want to stay. So it really is making that choice. I mean, Akima and I, like we told you, we were like, we got to get out of here. Let's figure out where we can go to. And the people at that time too were like, where can we go? Because we're from the diaspora. So we're like, are we going to go back to our like respective places, or like where else will take us? Let's find another place in the diaspora, like what? And this is during the height of COVID that we created this. So we are really thinking like, which place would have us, right? And that was the same thing of like, which place can you go to when people are telling you that you don't belong somewhere? But then there's also the other side to it. It was like, I do belong here. This is my home. No one is going to push me from it, right? And you see that in the fight that communities of color have, specifically Black and Brown people have, because we have been here. We people are descendants. I personally, I'm not, I can't claim things that are not mine, but because I'm Nigerian, right? So even for me, there's a history of colonization, of like people telling you that you're not from a certain space where you are, like on your own land, renaming you and telling you you're something else. But even here where we are on, like specifically we're on Lenape land, right? If you're in Brooklyn or certain parts of Brooklyn and Canarsie and Lenape land, this is indigenous land. And then the stewards of the land were enslaved peoples, were Black enslaved people. So how are you going to tell people that you uprooted and took to another place that this is now not their home? And then you're going to tell their descendants that you don't belong here either? Absolutely not. So I totally understand why people fighting for their spaces, fighting against gentrification. We just have different versions of it. Even when we were studying the archive, there was a period of gentrification, which is how Weeksville then kind of got reduced, because there's a period of industrialization and gentrification as well, so this sadly isn't new, right? But we're just seeing different versions of it, right? And so we have to remember that as we are fighting for these things, fighting for our space, fighting for our livelihood or our right to exist, that people before you have also done that. So don't be discouraged, because this is an ongoing thing, unfortunately, but it's reassuring to know that other people were also thinking about the same things you were. Other people were also fighting for their right to exist as well as you are. And because of their success with that, we are here, so you those things can sometimes uplift you in those hard and dark moments of it,
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add. I feel like you said, you covered a lot of bases, Rena, but maybe what I could say is, if the question is, what is flight, what is resistance, and how are they distinctive? I think, there's a groundedness, a rootedness, what it means to maintain or continue on in the struggle to sustain space. And I think, flight is an extension of that. And certainly for us in the diaspora, whose, families and generations and legacies like illustrate movement, there is also that possibility. And either or offer degrees of freedom as we can define it for ourselves within our context.
Right. And I think just to add to both of the points, that when I watched the video, I highlighted that there were and identified that there were was a occurring message of like the fact that we are stolen bodies on stolen land. And then it brings it back to the idea of like Marcus Garvey and the Black Power movement, Black nationalism, and going back home. And then the constant conversation about what is home? Is this home or is that home? But yeah, so thank you. The next question is, as artists, how has your art how have you seen art, maintain like unity and community for people of color, like music, visual art, etc.?
I guess I can start off and name that Rena and I are both a part of some really rooted communities in New York where, as artists, we get to collaborate. We also get to hold space for each other, as either outliers or outcasts, a vulnerable community of people, I would say artists are, who deal in the feeling, and the, I guess, some of the, maybe the concerns of people at large, communities at large. So I think as artists and as practitioners, community offers a space to uncover, recover, reimagine, and also repair.
I would add that I'm very, very grateful for the for the community that we're both a part of, and for me as well. I found grounding and community with herbalists as well that are I'm part of an herbalist collective for Lenape Hoking, and that in connection with the artist community that I'm a part of too has really it's just, I feel like saved me almost, because it really does help to have people around you that are like-minded in the sense of like being human. You just need other people to talk to other people to make mistakes with. I think that's really important, especially in this moment where we are so connected with technology. I find that at times there is a lack of grace for folks, and we're all learning growing beings, and you need people that you can make mistakes with. You need people where you can say the wrong thing, be corrected, and say, oh, thank you for correcting me, and then learn from that. I think that's very important. And yeah, I'm grateful for those communities. Specifically, I think within herbalism, I really connected with folks that were also engaging other artists and I would say even activists that are engaging with mutual aid, especially because that's something that is deeply connected in the community, and just being connected through community herbalism specifically. So really thinking about how to help people, folks that have been marginalized. Now I'm like really understanding, like calling people marginalized folks. I'm like, no, people have been marginalized, by this system, and giving them tools to empower them so that they don't have to be placed in this area or this space that they've been forced into, because none of us have to stay here. You know what I mean? We can do what we want. I really feel that and like believe that deeply. So yeah, I'm just really thankful to like these communities that have been holding me, allowing me to be myself and to ramble at times and to just listen as well, because I think that's all a part of just being human. So yeah.
I definitely think that that's important. Like as someone who is growing up and finding myself as a person, being around people that understand me not only as a female, but as an artist, as a musician, as a person of color, just to share and like kind of grow with people is really important. And I'm learning that more and more every day. This question is to get a little bit more into yourself and who you as an individual. So as a woman, as an artist, as a person of color, how have your experiences personally affected your drive and motivation in your work?
I'm like, Rena, do you want to jump in?
I can go ahead. I think that's an amazing question. Wow. The thing that I think is beautiful that each artist brings to their work is the fact that you bring your lived experiences to whatever you create. People have this fear of, oh my gosh, someone's going to take this thing from me. I'm like, just don't worry about that, because you are the only person that can live what you are living. You know what I mean? And I think that I'm a multi-layered person. I'm a Black, Nigerian, queer, woman, artist, perform many different things. I would say do too many things at times, but I think that the thing is the interdisciplinary aspect of the work that I engage in, right? I specifically work in sound, visuals, and scent. I've been heavily concentrated on creating more healing experiences for folks. And it really comes from the things that I experienced. Unfortunately, I would say, unfortunately, my practice really evolved out of, it was my thesis, but it evolved because I was in an abusive relationship. And in order for me to heal from that abusive relationship, I needed a space where I could relax within. But, if you're in a grad school program, that's not the time for relaxation. That's literally the opposite of that, right? But I was like, look, I can't do this. So I need to create a space where I can just and allow others to, because I also realized that I'm not the only person that's going through this, right? We all have things that we're dealing with. We don't know what anyone's dealing with. Someone might be dealing with stresses, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and so I really felt like this was my calling to create something for others that they could also experience. And so I think that that's the approach for anything that I create is, am I able to share this with others? Because maybe this could mean something to somebody. Maybe this could connect to somebody in some way. And also sometimes I think that it's also cool to just make a thing, I think that's also another thing. I'm really in love with process. It's messy. It's going to look wild sometimes. And then sometimes you're going to find something in there like, oh, that's what I needed. But I really think that because of the multi-layers that I guess make up who I am. I've moved a lot. I think also being raised as a Nigerian in America was like a different experience, I think about that often because when I do have conversations, like when I was younger, I was like, this isn't making sense. There's a big thing about like Blackness isn't one thing. We are multitudes. We're not a monolith. I think that's the most beautiful thing. And so when people continuously try to box us in, we are made up of so many different like colors, right? Colors, flavors, like levels. And so I think that that's something that as I've gotten older, I've been able to embrace more and more, and it's exciting. And it makes me want to share more with others, but also learn more with others, because I think that's really what it's about. So yeah, that's it.
I think for me, coming from really big family networks or structures or whatever you want to call it, families, coming from really big families on both my maternal and paternal sides, encourage a kind of practice of not only making but like collaboration, and what that space of like cooking or sewing and music making, singing, playing the piano, etc., what it offers in the way to both channel messages or energy or ancestry, as well as, what it offers for the self, to heal through trauma. of varying degrees. And so I think that drives, me, even when it hurts to share. I'm still learning about sharing, and what it means to, I guess, will oneself to like criticism or etc. But I think being in community amplifies or extends the opportunity to be able to share and to exchange. And I think that really drives me.
I don't know if y'all are getting to see like the environments that I'm grateful to be in. But so for me, like sound and frequency, which is really just different vibrations of energy, it has given me an escape from, things that are painful or scary. Um, so music has always been that for me, has always been an escape, and a way for me to process the things that are happening, because sometimes it takes me a while to understand what's going on, but listening to it from another person's perspective or writing it down into a rhythm has always been like a beautiful thing for me. So this is, I'm like-minded and I understand. Okay, so the next question is, Akima said a little bit about it, but ancestry. So how has, your exploration in this work connected you to your ancestry, and how can it connect others to understand? Yeah.
I'll hop in. um, huh. uh, I think, again, to the point that Rena made earlier, what it means to, I think what it means to be an African person in the new world, or just in the world, means that there is this legacy of movement, and there's the opportunity to be able to like imagine, and as well as like recall or access the different places and the journeys that some of our ancestors, direct and otherwise, have, what paths they've crossed. And, I think this was an opportunity, the making of this piece and the collaboration process was an opportunity to like recount and to think through like the ways our, for Rena and I personally, I guess, our parents, our grandparents, and even ourselves, like, how do we navigate citizenship, and I think as well, like what endures through that is the relationship to the land, and being able to have access to the land, and being able to arrive at and create space. So, yeah.
I would add that, thank you, Akima. I would add that I remember there was a part where we were researching things and I started getting offended. And Akima had to remind me, like, you have to remember the time that this was, the words are coming from, but also the sentiments are coming from. And my offense that I was feeling was the ways in which they were talking about Africans. Because there was a movement to actually go back to Africa and to colonize Africa by the African Americans to then make the Africans pick cotton. And they felt that they would be more sympathetic to that because they themselves had already encountered that and they look like them because they are of them, right? And I was so shocked that within how many years, this was the thing that some folks wanted to do. But then you have to remember that this is the way that they felt that they could empower themselves and to also gain agency because of what had been shown to them by the white man at the time, right? They saw that the people that were in charge were the people that were controlling the flow of the money, of the cash crop. So they felt that they could then put themselves in that position and be more sympathetic and empathetic to doing that. And of course, some people did try to go back, as we know, like specifically with Liberia. And we know that that did not exactly pan out the way that folks thought it would, because people already exist on the land. Just like when people came here to America, people have already been existing on this land on Turtle Island, right? So you can't just make people do a thing so that for capitalism, that's hello, we're living in this now, right? So I think that it was just interesting to see how, like, yeah, this ancestry, you think about like, oh, there are people that I come from that were encountering different individuals or different people from different backgrounds through trade, because this was a lot of it was through trade. I'm actually it's funny, I'm an immigrant actually, and also as well, so I'm first generation in a way, but also still an immigrant because I was born in Canada, right? So, but even in our research too, Black people were fleeing to Canada because there they were also able to have their own land. They were able to grow their own crops. We had this letter that we read that actually there were portions of that in the piece where this woman was writing her friend. She was like, "Girl, you got to come up here. You can plant your own stuff. You know, I have my own land. I have my whole garden going up here. Like we're cultivating crops, everything. Like once you get past the hard parts, it's amazing." So it's like people are really trying to find their place, find where they could be their fullest selves, where they could live. You know what I mean? And so I just think of that in so many ways of just for so many generations, just trying to find their place, trying to find their way to live after they have been disrupted. You know, their whole everything has just been uprooted, and yet still, nevertheless, they persisted. And that's I think the beauty that comes out of all of this, you know, through all the pain and also the anguish and really just like the unfairness of everything. There were still people that were like, no, I'm gonna live. Like it is what it is. Like this is where we're at, and that's what we're here to do, is we're here to survive, you know.
Definitely. I think the conversation went in a way that I want to continue it. The idea of trauma was brought up in what Rena said. I think trauma is a very complicated but also simple idea. And the idea of African Americans going back to Africa and what Rena described, it just shows hurt and trauma. And so being able to identify trauma is really important. And I think that you don't have to go through something to understand it. I think you can see it, observe it, explore it, to understand. You may not be able to empathize, but you can understand. And I think that's definitely something that was instilled in me since I was younger, because you know how your parents would say, "I did it, so you don't have to." And that's embedded in this conversation a lot. But I don't know if you guys want to speak on the idea of trauma, or if you want to keep going.
Sure, definitely. I think you bring up a really great point. You know, a lot of the things that we observed in the archive, but also at present, like you said, a lot of times we need to remember, and that's why I really think having grace is really important. But a lot of people are going through a multitude of things right now, and a lot of behavior that we have, that others have, is a result of trauma, of coping through what we have experienced and encountered. And it takes different types of work in order to work through those things. You know, different types of plants can help you work through trauma. You know, different types of therapies can help you through trauma. Music is a form of therapy. We talk about frequencies and vibrations of sound. That's with intentional listening, you know, sound healing, that's a type of therapy. We are engaging in it constantly and we don't realize it. You know, sometimes people put names on things and it might change something, but we've been doing this for centuries, right? So it's just, I think that a lot of times when, you know, somebody will maybe behave a certain way or talk a certain way, or even their art looks a certain way, it sometimes is because of the trauma that they've experienced. And it's really important to realize too, so, you know, removing ourselves from thinking that things are being done to us because it's us. It's sometimes things are, it's not to do with us. It's to do with that person's thing. You know what I mean? And that's really important to remember. You can only worry about the things that you can control. Like, I think that's one of the best things that was ever taught to me. You can't worry about the things that you can't control. Those are not your things to worry about, you know? And I think that, you know, as we saw through, yes, exactly, it's not personal. As we saw, especially with that archive, seeing what was being written and this movement to go back to Africa for the intention of, you know, creating this new capitalist structure, it wasn't personal. This is what had been taught to these people as a result of them being uprooted and seeing this is how you survive, this is how you make money, this is how you sustain. It was because of the trauma that they had endured that this is where their thoughts were going. But then you had other people like Frederick Douglass who are like, actually not. But that is because he is the type of person that had worked through his trauma in a different way, right? So I can't, I to remove that judgment of thinking, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It's like, that's what that person had, right? Those are the things that were available to them. So I think that's something to remember and constantly, you know, what might have been available to that person that you're interacting with. But I mean, also, even still, you cannot take on anybody's stuff. I think that's also to remember. You have to still protect yourself, right? You can acknowledge somebody's trauma, but that's also not your job to fix. And so, as with this the African Colonization Society, you know, certain things were working and certain things were not. And as you can see, things were successful in one respect and then also not. Some people did go back, but then, you know, you also, whenever there's outside factors or actors coming in, you had people that were not Black that were now funding things. And it's like, what's your motivations behind doing that? You know? So these are things to also remember. Who is also acting upon your trauma too? Who is using that for their gain? It's just, I'll leave it there, but because we could just keep going. But I think those are things to remember, not only in the past, but at present, you know, the ways in which we function with each other and for ourselves.
I mean, all I would add to that, you know, maybe an addendum to the point of like, you know, protecting oneself. I do think there is, you know, collective responsibility to in, you know, what it means to both endure and I guess survive, you know. And I imagine that it took a whole lot of efforting in the way of like coming together for there to be overcoming of some of the nefarious things that people were enduring and are enduring now. So yeah, being able to maybe, you know, balance notions of the self as community, the self as, you know, like what you, the self, the person experiences, you know, in your own sort of pathology or psychosis. So, yeah.
I think when a conversation cannot end, it means it's a good one. So that means we're doing something here. The last question, because we have about 3 minutes to wrap up, just like in 30 seconds to a minute analysis, like Weeksville. I've done and seen and observed several programs at Weeksville. So how has Weeksville given you a platform to discuss important subjects and topics in alignment. Yeah.
I'll hop in. I mean, you know, yeah, it's with great thanks and gratitude that we're able to be here to discuss something that came out of, you know, ideation and also like isolation and having to navigate coming together and how to communicate, you know, some of the things that we felt were urgent in this time. And so, you know, we thank Joyce, we thank Zenzele, we thank Anita for giving us, you know, the space to be able to like push, you know, and challenge, you know, ways of being able to like make this work accessible and make this work uh, like something that we could months later, you know, be able to return to and sort through and tease, you know, meaning from. So I think, you know, being able to collaborate in this time was a really pleasurable experience, as it was very, you know, what's the word? I got really sick at the end of, you know, our performance too, as a result of just like what it meant to hold so much of the weight of making sure that this history, this legacy is preserved. And, you know, it is a heavy toll. So, I don't know, that we're doing this work, that it has a contemporary meaning, you know, to be able to look through or parse through historical documents and to be on physical, historical grounds offers a really unique opportunity to be able to transmit and extend all of this information.
I think Akima said almost everything that needed to be said. I'll just add that it really has been an honor and a blessing to been able to be part of this and to for Weeksville to allow us to express ourselves, but to also excavate these beautiful archives within the written and also the physical structures. You know, I have lived around here and never gone to Weeksville before this, which is horrible. And then when I got the opportunity to, I was like, why have I not been here before? I mean, even the way the whole space has been, you know, maintained and taken care of there. As I was there from our first site visit, I was just excited about the plants that have been planted there because there's so much intentionality about the space and preserving the area, and you can feel the energy of the people that were there before us in the wood, in the bricks of the houses even. And the fact that with connection to the newer building are all there together and in this neighborhood is really beautiful, right? And so I just felt so happy and really just appreciative that I got this chance to work with Akima. We had been talking about collaborating together for so long, and then I thought that she did this. I was like, Akima, did you do this? She was like, no, this just came together. I was like, wow, that's amazing. So it was really meant to happen. And I would also add that we have gotten opportunities to share this with people that are outside of New York and to, you know, get more people knowing about Weeksville, which I think is also amazing because this history is here for us to learn from. And I mean, us, everybody, you know, and that's really important. And so it was just so great. Like it went to the Ann Arbor Film Festival, and I was happy that people in Ann Arbor are now knowing about Weeksville. Like that's amazing. You know what I mean? So yes, just thank you, Weeksville. Thank you, everybody, just for allowing this and having this conversation with you. Like, Leo, we're so happy. Like, this is amazing. Like that's the platform, I feel like, right there, you know?
Thank you. Okay, so this is the end. But this is also the beginning, but this is the end of this conversation. I want to thank the artists, of course. I want to thank Sister Joyce and Zenzele, so much for the opportunity to be here. I learned a lot. I've grown a lot, just being part of this dialogue. And then again, I told y'all I watched the video like 7 times because just to grasp an understanding, I think repetition is important. So yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you, both of you. I want to say thank you to Weeksville for giving us this platform, and we got to explore beautiful ideas and some that are not so beautiful. And these topics are so neglected. So just having the space, the environment to share these topics and concerns and etc. So appreciate and gratitude towards Weeksville. And then finally, to everyone that's watching, to everyone that's going to watch, thank you for being here. Thank you for caring enough to support, and hopefully this shed light on some things that either you didn't know or you wanted to learn more of. Happy 5th of July, everybody. I hope everyone enjoyed. Have a great week. I know it's Monday, so hopefully to start your week on a great note. Thank you, Rena. Thank you, Akima. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you so much, Clea. Thank you, everyone. Happy 5th.
Happy 5th, y'all.